to episode 3 of Growth Talks, a podcast and a video series from our lovable learning technology heroes here at Growth Engineering. In each episode, we interview an industry visionary, a learning expert, in an attempt to pick their brains for as many nuggets of gold as possible. This week is no exception. I spoke with Daniel Cass, a product manager and a digital designer for L'Oreal Australia. L'Oreal has been using Growth Engineering Learning App solution for several years to build a connected community for their beauty advisors. I had a great chat with Daniel, who told us more about the work they're doing to upskill their associates and create a learning engagement on the scale that they've never seen before. Ready? Then let's get started. Hello, Daniel, and welcome to our Growth podcast series. We're really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Daniel, and I'm the digital content specialist and beauty advisor administrator for L'Oreal Australia within their L'Oreal Luxe division. So I've been in this role now for maybe 3.5 years, and this year will be my 5th year working for L'Oreal Australia.
Great. So obviously L'Oreal is a huge company. So what's your background before that? How did you end up with L'Oreal Australia?
I actually got my way into L'Oreal through a partnership at uni. We had a mentor program at the university I was at, and through that program I met the compensation benefits manager at the time. I partnered with him and I got my way into L'Oreal through him, just through the opportunity coming up at the time. So I started out as a coordinator, and then that was a limited contract. And then by the end of my contract, L'Oreal Luxe was moving to growing their learning and development space into something new and looking at e-learning as that option. And that's sort of how the role got created and how we ended up partnering with Growth Engineering.
Perfect. So obviously, that sounds like it's been sort of a rolling journey into the learning department, and maybe there's some new things that happened in that. As you said, new role was created in there. So What kind of problems does your learning department solve for at L'Oreal Australia?
So sort of before we had Growth Engineering, our learning was quite rigid, whereas it would probably happen 1 to 3 times a year, depending on how big the marketing calendars were. So generally our educators would fly to 4 or 5 states, and they'd stay there for 2 or 3 days, and they'll train those beauty advisors, and then they'd move on to the next state. But that face-to-face contact would only happen twice a year from the educator's point of view. But then our retail education managers, which are like our area managers for those stores, would be the main contact throughout the rest of the year to coach and train and develop. But the missing piece of that puzzle was the ongoing support and, the always-on approach to learning, which is what our app, the One Luxe Lounge, has helped sort of solve.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So I think if I hear you right, it's like you moved from a sort of here's it happens once to more of a constant kind of educational program. And can you kind of tell me a little bit more of what kind of things you run on the app today?
Yeah, so most of it is definitely new product launches. So what that's allowed us to do is when we do have our face-to-face training, which we've just been able to start doing again, is it's been able to be a bit more focused on maybe 2 or 3 key areas for the first half of the year. And what they're just freed up a lot more time to focus on those rather than every single launch that's going to be coming out in that 6-month period. So thanks to the One Luxe Lounge, we can put the smaller launches directed through to the app, and then the in-house training or the face-to-face training would be a lot more focused and spent a lot more time on service and like the bigger launches, really, just so that the BAs have the knowledge and skills and confidence to really hit those KPIs in store for the big focus of that period.
Cool. Love that you mentioned KPIs and metrics. What kind of successes have you seen with the Growth Engineering One Luxe Lounge app so far? What kind of impact?
We've had some great feedback in terms of like BAs being able to refresh their knowledge at their own pace, but also overall support scores. So we do surveys, I think once a year on many, many different sort of metrics across sort of different categories. And we've seen that the area for definitely support has increased, and the ability to do my job well. We've seen some great strides in those numbers going up just slightly, which is always what we want to see. And yeah, just the more personal contact, I guess, with our beauty advisors, being able to, we're in their pockets pretty much. So they can always reach out to us via the app, and we can make sure that they have all the information straight to them. And it's also lowered those communication barriers as well that we've sort of seen sometimes with lag, like email. It's definitely minimized email trails as well, we've seen, because everything can be sort of communicated in PDF format onto the app for our like monthly activations.
Cool. So, and what I gather also is that obviously when you say the communication barrier has been lowered, there's a lot of communication between the beauty advisors themselves, and they become more like advocates.
Yeah, correct. Definitely the main thing it gets used for is like our monthly bulletins, which houses like basically what's coming up for whatever month we're about to roll into. Mm-hmm. And they can reply to that if they have any questions about what's going on. We can communicate incentives. But yeah, we're just creating that space for because Australia is so big, just a space for our beauty advisors to interact with each other that they normally wouldn't interact with. So, on the other side of the country, different brands, if they want to find out more about the Kiehl's or Lancome, Armani, YSL brand, they might have not known how to find that information, but now it's all within the app, so they can go and find out about that brand to see if they'd like to maybe move into a role within that brand.
Nice. So it promotes kind of that retention in your company as well.
Yeah, and just sort of helped with making our BAs more multi-branded, which is sort of part of the strategy for the division. They were quite siloed before, but now because there's so many, the multi-branded learning on there, it's a lot easier for BAs to sort of move around.
Yeah, perfect. And just touching a little bit more on the measurement side, I know you guys do a lot in terms of tracking people, and what kind of numbers have you been seeing on the app beforehand? And just off the top of your head, if you remember.
Off the top of my head, yeah. Well, ever since we launched, every year was beating the previous year. So I think at the end of 2021, we finished with like just shy of 60,000 logins, I think. Modules, I think 8,000 maybe, 8,000 modules. And yeah, these were just big numbers that we just weren't expecting. Like we saw a lot of interactivity throughout the pandemic, and then we thought it might sort of tail off towards the end of last year, but we saw these big numbers coming through, which was great to see.
Yeah. And one of the key things I've also heard from L'Oreal is that reinforcement. The beauty advisors love to battle each other on the knowledge.
Yeah, we only launched battles, probably was sometime last year. And it's a great tool to have during our in face-to-face trainings, so we can set up personalized quizzes for that training, just to add that bit of interaction within those sessions.
Nice. So great to hear how things are going with you. If we take a little bit of a wider step, what do you think are like the big challenges generally in learning and development world? And yeah, what kind of things do you think should be improved?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always feedback. I think it is so important, because how are you supposed to find out if your training programs are actually helping the people you're trying to train? And getting that feedback in a timely manner to make sure that you can actually action it before your next iteration, I think is something that we could probably do a little bit better. And it's definitely something that I try and keep in mind for when, we come to the end of the year. I make sure that I send out a survey and try and touch as many people as I do to make sure that for the next year, I know sort of what I can maybe do differently. But yeah, definitely feedback, I think, is one of the biggest things that can be done to really improve the way businesses do their learning.
Oh, that's marvelous. I mean, that's a great self-reflection, saying, okay, well, let's gather people's input and actually what's happened and how we can improve it and make sure that they're like really capturing what they're meant to be learning.
Yeah, and even maybe annually probably is too long. So maybe, I mean, even the time frame of when you captured that feedback could probably be even more important.
Yeah, and it's fresher people's minds maybe if it's more frequent, right? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What are you about, obviously you've been using this technology now for a couple of years. What would you say to companies that don't really use technology for their learning yet? What do you think how can technology leverage better?
They're missing out on so much data about their people, their employees, and how they learn. Definitely, I've been able to do insights as to when beauty advisors are most active on the app, and that's helped me decide, okay, well, I can see these days are generally quiet, these ones are a bit more busier, so I'll post more important things on those days, or even the time I post. I know that before work and after work is when I'm going to get the most traction on the app, so to make sure that my posts or modules get the most visibility when I publish them, is I'll do them within those hours. So it just helps structure the way you promote your learning, I guess, as well. But also, it really highlights the employees who love to learn. So you can easily see, like, we've got some BAs who have completed almost everything on the app, and there's just under 300 modules, and they only probably work on one brand, but they've done everything. So they enjoy learning, and those like the few that I would probably pick up, we're like, we should maybe look at the career progression for this person.
Oh, absolutely. That's fabulous, knowing exactly who is interested in sort of things and how they...
But it also allows you to sort of make it into a bit more of a competition. And at L'Oreal, we love a bit of friendly competition. So either putting states versus states or brands versus brands and then teams within those stores against each other to really see who can be the champion is always fun.
Yeah. And how does the champions then are celebrated? Are they...
Usually we put together like a big product prize pack to be like, thank you for being like a star learner. Like it will usually be at the end of the year. So whoever's sort of racked up the most points by the end of the year, we celebrate them a little bit, but we do other bits and pieces throughout the year to highlight our learners.
I love it. I think you obviously have a big social campaign around this whole learning, and that friendly competition always spurs people on. So
try to.
So it sounds like there's lots of good things happening to make sure people are like actively picking up the app. If you had to give one tip to a fellow administrator on the app or in the LMS, what kind of things would you tell them to focus on?
I'd probably say it comes down to planning. Like, definitely if I was new coming onto the platform, I'd say plan before you sort of jump in there. So like whether that's, working out your asset management categories, like how are you going to store all your images, your videos, make sure that it's in a catalog that's easily navigatable. How are you going to do your team structure to make sure that your people are going into the right sort of branch? Just avoids a lot of like back and forth trying to figure out where people need to go. If you can get that all that groundwork done before you like step on the pedal, you'll have a lot more of an easier sort of success.
Yeah, no, that's really, I think we always underestimate the planning phase because it's like, okay, these are things that are easy, but
it's like getting your hands on this like bright and shiny new tool and you just want to play around with it. But it's like, no, take a step back and like, okay, make sure you know what each sort of function does first and then work out how it's going to all sort of work together.
Yeah, and how it's going to make an impact in your company, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Obviously, you have to ask this question. Would you recommend growth engineering to your peers?
Absolutely. So a lot of our L'Oreal subsidiaries have obviously rolled over to using growth engineering, or we've partnered with growth engineering because L'Oreal subsidiary already had been working with them. And definitely the progress we've made over the last 3 years definitely just wouldn't have been possible if we hadn't partnered with growth engineering. we've won 2 awards together, which I think is an outstanding remark of that partnership.
Yeah, and we thank you, obviously, putting yourself forward for those awards. And it's not just because we give you a good app. I think it's the partnership really aspect where you kind of test what else can we do, and we keep finding ways of doing things. So really excited about that. Yeah.
It's a super cooperative partnership as well. Like working, even though we're in completely opposite sides of the globe in different time zones, it's still super easy to work with each other, which is probably one of the other things that makes it so successful.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's been really, really great chatting with you. Anything else that you wanted to add to our discussion today? Just wanted to give you a chance.
For me, I think we've covered off some pretty good topics.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you brought. I don't think necessarily all companies know how well you could use the social as for the personal learning side of things. So I think that's great that you brought that out.
Absolutely. Like there's just so many different ways where you can. I think the mindset of learning, it can be quite black and white, whereas actually, it's much more colourful in how you can get that learning across in different formats.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And what I loved about one of the piece of information you said, that you can see a lot of learners who then want to retain in the company because of this kind of journey that they're taking. So that's correct. That's so great in this era of great resignation that we're all trying to combat.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely really highlights, how we can support those people to make sure they stay within us, because we don't want them obviously going to our competitors, and learning is such a big component when it comes to retention.
You nailed it right there. So with that, thank you, Daniel, for taking part, and good luck with One Lux going forward. Can't wait to see what
worries. Thank you so much for having me, Mina. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for watching or listening to Growth Talks. This has been a podcast by Growth Engineering. For more information, please head over to www.growthengineering.co.uk for supporting resources, tip sheets, guidebooks, and much more. Thanks again, and we'll see you at the next episode.